What up, friends? The only attention I need is your views. And today, we're going to be reviewing the newest album by The Smile, A Light for Attracting Attention. This is the debut album by English rock band The Smile. The Smile is the side project of Radiohead members Thom Yorke and Jonny Greenwood, alongside Sons of Kemet drummer Tom Skinner. To be honest, other than the hits, I don't really follow either of these bands, so if anything, you are going to be getting a review that it has no biases or former sort of expectations set up by either of these bands. And yeah, I really didn't have any expectations going to this project, good or bad. And honestly, it's not a bad project overall, with some nice and vivid sounding tunes, even if it can occasionally sound a bit aimless and directionless here and there. The same is a fairly ominous opener to the record, with a repeating synth and electronic drum beat. The vocals that come in are delicate to kind of counteract this, however they do have a weight to them as well. It's not the most ear-catching song out there though, and I don't know if it really draws you in as well as it could have. It's not as immediately impactful as I would like, and the instrumental does have this sort of psychedelic leaning to it, which is pretty cool, but I also find the lyrics to be a bit simplistic and basic. This is especially true in the whole sort of ethos of the song of everybody being the same, essentially. It's not a bad track per se, but I do think it could have been expanded upon, especially in the lyrics. The Opposite, in contrast, is one of the best songs on the record, I think, complete with a very driving beat and catchy guitar riff. It still has the darker tone of the opening track, but in a more sinister and hazy way. It almost reminds me of Think Tank era Blur a little bit, and I am definitely a fan of that. Background vocals are haunting and create a great ambience to back up the very quirky guitar riff flares here and there, alongside Tom's vocals. The fact that these guitar flares also match the vocal cadence is also a pretty neat plus. It's a pretty interesting track, I think, it being much more punky in its instrumentation. It's much more in your face, and the overall tempo is a lot faster. This fits the angrier tone in the lyrics very well, as it's largely dealing with the sort of Hollywood elite like Harvey Weinsteins of the world and how despicable they are that they take advantage of the people underneath them. Mostly in ways that we've been kind of seeing recently, with them kind of seducing people to do these fucking weirdo acts in order to keep their careers or say that they'll move them up in the world or something. It's quick and to the point, but I think it works well for the type of track that it is. The next track, Pana-Vision, is another pretty good one, I think. The album is at its best when it's doing these smoother tracks, and I like the piano focus on this one. It's a nice change of pace, and it does still have that foreboding vibe, but with a hint of somberness as well. The drums do a good job at keeping the pace going, and I'm also digging the sort of brass instrumentation that makes its way in here. I think this might be one of Tom's most engaging vocal patterns on the record, and it really fits this instrumental. The lyrics about sort of realizing someone's true nature is pretty fitting for the very elegant yet suspicious tone that this song has. Now, if I liked The Opposite, you know I liked The Smoke because it's doing largely similar things. Some sultry and smooth bass and beats, wistful vocals, and general smoky mood call this track home, fittingly enough. It's honestly one of the catchiest songs on this thing, and it might be my favorite song on the record, actually. The brass and synths add an ethereal touch to the track and give off the impression that Tom is just sort of distraught at the treatment that the people of the world are going through alongside the treatment of the world itself. This is fitting because the track is largely talking about climate change and how we're not only destroying the planet, but our futures too. Speech Bubbles, on the other hand, is just kind of there for me. There's not really a standout element to it, it's mostly just Tom's vocals, a simple guitar riff, and a sort of curtain of violins that kind of hangs in the background. It feels like it's just kind of wandering around aimlessly. There's nothing particularly bad about it, but it also doesn't really excel at anything either. I do think the bridge is pretty nice when the vocals and drums pick up, though. Thin Thing and Open the Floodgates don't really do much for me, largely feeling like they're just too drawn out or boring, but I do think Free in the Knowledge is a pretty good track. It is the more stripped down and simplistic instrumental style much better, I think, feeling very warm and engaging. I also think the lyrics on this one are a lot better than the other two as well. Tom's vocals are also better here, feeling very smooth and melodic, despite the more serious subject matter about overcoming division and embracing unity, essentially. I also like the light yet dramatic strings and synths, as they add to the vocals and guitar without taking attention away from them. It has an ethereal beauty to it, and the outro where the drum beat is added in and all the instrumentals kind of come together and swell together is really great, and it also kind of represents the track's message too. A hairdryer also doesn't really change much, feeling kinda stagnant and uninteresting. I'm digging these strings and the twangy tone of the guitar, but Tom's singing kinda the same way as on a lot of other songs on the record, and I just don't think it carries much weight to it. I say this though, I do appreciate kinda sticking it to the Trump and Boris Johnson types. For some reason, I am getting like late career Muse interlude vibes from Waving a White Flag, but I kinda love it for that. The constant electronic bass and backing instrumental have a really unique vibe for the project without seeming too out there. Tom's vocals also have a nice flow to them, empowered by the backing strings and synths. The introduction of the drums are smooth, and they don't take away from the very dramatic and electronic beauty of the track either. I'm also digging how the song feels like a rising tension, as after the previous few songs, it's like the people are finally coming together to fight back against the powers that be. We Don't Know What Tomorrow Brings largely just feels like a repeat of You Will Never Work in Television Again, just with not as good lyrics, but I have to say I do really like the ending track of the record, Skrting on the Surface. Delicate guitar and some warm drums add structure to a subtly somber tune as Tom sort of laments the state of the world and how broken we are and how hopeless it seems that things are going to get better. Compared to a lot of tracks on here, I like how full this song sounds. It's very layered compared to a lot of the other songs, as there's not really any free space. Every part of the song is taken up by an instrument, and I think that's pretty cool. Pretty much every single instrumental that appears on this record appears in this song, and I think it's a really good culmination of the album's themes because of that, especially when we kind of get some isolated instrumentals in the outro of the track. So for coming in with no expectations, this album was pretty good. There's definitely a unique vibe going on here thanks to Tom's vocals and the combination of the ambient electronic instrumentals alongside the harder hitting guitar driven ones. There was also a decent amount of variety, using the same instruments to create some pretty different arrangements, I think, alongside different vibes as well. There were also some moments that were more on the experimental side, which I appreciated. However, I do find the album to be kind of aimless and directionless at times, with some songs sounding like they were either stretched thin or they weren't expanded upon enough. I also find that the lyrics occasionally felt a little too vague and a little too simplistic. I would have liked the vividness of the instrumentals to also translate to vividness in lyrics as well, and we do get that in a decent amount of the songs. It's just that some of them kind of stick out as being simplistic when you pair them with the other ones. Granted, there wasn't really a song that I disliked on the record, it's just that some were stronger than others, and the stronger tracks being paired with the more simplistic ones, it makes the more simplistic ones stand out. But overall, if you're in the mood for a mellow listen, I definitely think you should give this one a shot. I'm feeling a light 7 on this newest album by The Smile. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and I think this is a pretty cool album cover. It has a sort of like traditional watercolor aesthetic to it, which is pretty neat. I do think it fits the sort of artsy and ambient nature of the album. It does have that sort of naturalistic feel, despite having a lot of electronics on it. So I think the cover does a pretty good job at conveying the general sounds of the record. But that's all I had to say about this newest album by The Smile. What did you guys think? Do you think this is maybe Radiohead's best side project yet, or did it leave you wanting more? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you too are smiling, and until the next one, farewell.